The night her shift ended, Nurse Emma Reed should have walked out of the hospital like everyone else. But something in the silence of room 312 held her in place. Something that pressed against her chest and refused to let her breathe normally. And as the fluorescent lights flickered above the empty corridor and the smell of antiseptic turned sharp and metallic in the air, she felt an unexplainable pull guiding her back toward the dying patient who had asked her to stay. An elderly man whose eyes had looked far too aware for someone moments away from death, and when she stepped inside that dim hospital room and heard the heart monitor echo in slow, heavy beats, she had no idea that she was walking into a truth buried deep inside her own forgotten past. Because when the old man leaned closer and whispered words that no stranger could possibly know, when he spoke her name with eerie certainty and claimed she had once been the one lying in that very bed, claimed she had died and chosen not to leave, the air shifted, the temperature dropped, and reality itself began to fracture around her as machines flatlined and her own reflection seemed to fade from the glass, forcing her to question whether she had ever truly walked out of this hospital alive, or whether she had been wandering its halls all along, guiding lost souls between life and something far darker, something that waited patiently in the shadows beyond the flickering lights. Watching her remember, waiting for the moment, she understood that staying after her shift was never kindness, never coincidence, but destiny unfolding again. And as the old man's final breath dissolved into a long, unbroken tone, Emma felt the walls of the room stretch into an endless corridor of whispering figures and shifting darkness, and in that instant she realized that what the patient whispered did not just change her life, it revealed that her life had already ended, and what she truly was had only just begun to awaken. The hospital corridors were almost silent. Only the hum of fluorescent lights lingered above the polished floor. Emma adjusted her badge and checked the clock at the nurse's station. Her shift had ended 20 minutes ago. Everyone else had already left, but room 312 still had a light on. Mr. Callahan had been restless all evening. 86 years old. Lung cancer. Stage 4. He had asked her to stay. Just a little longer, he had said, his voice thin as paper. Emma told herself she was only being kind. The hallway felt colder than usual as she walked back. The scent of antiseptic hung heavy in the air. Her shoes echoed against the tiles, too loud, too sharp. She pushed open the door slowly. The room was dim except for the soft glow of the heart monitor. Green lines crawled across the screen. Steady. Too steady. Mr. Callahan lay motionless beneath thin white sheets. His eyes were open. They followed her as she stepped inside. "You came back," he whispered. His voice sounded clearer than before, stronger. That unsettled her. She moved closer to the bed. The air felt thicker near him, almost metallic. She forced a gentle smile. "I promised I would check on you," she said. His fingers twitched against the blanket. "Close the door," he murmured. A chill crept along her spine. There was no reason to feel afraid. He was a frail old man. Still, she turned and shut the door. The click of the latch sounded final. The monitor beeped once, then again. Slower now. Emma stepped to his bedside. His eyes were locked on her face. Unblinking. "Do you hear them?" he asked. She leaned in. "Hear what?" "The ones in the hallway." Her breath caught in her throat. There was no one outside. She had checked. "I hear nothing," she replied carefully. He smiled. The smile stretched too wide for his thin face. "They wait," he whispered. "For you." Her pulse quickened. The fluorescent light above flickered once, then steadied. Emma told herself that hospitals were full of strange sounds. Old buildings made old noises. Mr. Callahan's grip suddenly tightened around her wrist, stronger than it should have been. His skin felt icy, far colder than before. "You stayed because you care," he said. His eyes were bright now, too bright. "They told me you would." Her mouth went dry. "Who told you?" He did not blink. "The ones who come when the heart monitor goes silent." The machine beside him beeped again, slower. Gap. Bape. Emma glanced at the screen. His heart rate was dropping. She reached for the call button. His hand clamped down harder. "You must listen," he insisted. The air pressure in the room shifted. Her ears rang faintly, like standing too close to a speaker. "You have been here before," he said. "In this room." She shook her head. "I started working here last year." His smile returned. "No," he breathed. "Long before that." The overhead light flickered again. This time it dimmed. Shadows stretched across the walls. Emma felt a sudden wave of dizziness. The room seemed unfamiliar. The furniture looked older, the paint more faded. She blinked hard. Everything snapped back. The monitor skipped a beat. Flatlined for half a second. Then rhythm again. Mr. Callahan leaned closer, though he had not moved his body. His voice dropped to a rasp. You were the patient. The words struck her chest like ice water. She tried to laugh. The sound died in her throat. You died here, he whispered. Her vision blurred at the edges. She smelled something burning. Electrical, sharp. I read your name, he continued. Emma Reed. Her heart slammed against her ribs. His grip tightened further. Pain shot through her wrist. You were 23, he said softly. Car accident. A flash exploded behind her eyes. Rain on glass, headlights spinning, metal crushing inward. She staggered backward, but his hand still held her. You chose to stay, he said, to help them. The monitor beeped once more, longer this time. Her breath came in shallow bursts. That is not possible, she said. The room temperature dropped suddenly. Her breath fogged faintly in the air. They need someone to guide them, he whispered. Someone who knows the way. The monitor flatlined. A sharp, continuous tone filled the room. Emma reached for the emergency button. Her hand passed straight through it. She froze. Her fingers felt nothing. Nothing at all. She stared at her own hand. Faint. Translucent. Mr. Callahan released her wrist. His body lay still now, lifeless. Yet his eyes remained open, and they were not looking at her anymore. They were looking past her. Toward the door, Emma slowly turned around. The hallway outside the glass panel was no longer empty. Figures stood there. Jing. Blurry. Watching. Their shapes flickered like candle flames. One stepped closer to the door. Its face was pale, confused, lost. Emma felt something shift inside her chest. A pull. Gentle, but firm, like gravity changing direction. The door opened without sound. Cold air flooded the room. The figure in the hallway whispered her name. Not Mr. Callahan. Another voice. Many voices. Soft. Desperate. She looked back at the bed. The old man's body lay still beneath the sheets. Nurses rushed into the room. Through her. They moved around her without seeing her. One began chest compressions. Another called the time. Emma stepped aside instinctively, but they passed straight through her shoulder. No warmth, no resistance, only emptiness. Her mind raced. The memories grew stronger now. Hospital ceiling lights. A doctor saying her name. A choice. Stay or go. She remembered saying yes. She remembered the silence afterward. The first patient she guided. The first frightened soul she comforted. She had forgotten. All of it. Until now. The figure in the doorway reached toward her. Its hand trembled. Afraid. Emma swallowed hard. The fear inside her began to change. Not into relief. Not into peace. But into understanding. She stepped forward slowly. The cold did not bite anymore. It welcomed her. The voices quieted as she approached, waiting, watching. And as she took the trembling hand in hers, the hospital around her began to fade, and the hallway stretched into something endless and dim, filled with shadows that breathed and shifted, and the whispering grew louder, forming words she had not heard in years, reminding her of promises she had made before she forgot, reminding her that she was never meant to leave, reminding her that this was only the beginning of what she had chosen to become. And as another heart monitor somewhere down the corridor began to echo with a long, unbroken tone, she felt the pull again, stronger this time, guiding her forward into the waiting dark, where more eyes opened and more voices called her name. And she stepped toward them, and the darkness moved in response, and something far deeper than the hospital walls stirred awake and began to reach back toward her with recognition and hunger. The darkness did not feel empty. It felt alive. It moved like slow breathing walls. Emma felt the cold presence wrap around her shoulders. Not violent, not gentle, certain. The hallway behind her stretched longer. Doors appeared on both sides. Each door carried a faint glow beneath it. Soft, pulsing, like distant heartbeats. A whisper rose from the nearest door. Frightened, confused. Alone. Emma stepped toward it without thinking. Her hand reached for the handle. It shimmered beneath her touch. When she opened it, the hospital room inside looked frozen in time. A young boy sat on the edge of the bed. His hospital gown hung loosely on his thin shoulders. He looked around wildly. No one responded to him. Doctors moved through his body, as if he were mist. "I am still here," the boy cried. "They cannot see me." Emma felt the ache inside her chest again, the same ache she had once felt. She stepped inside the room. The boy looked at her instantly. "You see me," he whispered. "Yes," Emma replied softly. The machines behind him screamed in a long, flat tone. The doctors stopped. They lowered their heads. Time resumed. The boy began to shake. "I do not want to stay," he said. His fear filled the room like smoke. Emma knelt beside him. Her hand rested on his shoulder. This time she felt warm. He felt her too. "You are not alone," she told him. The walls of the room began to dissolve into shadow. The hospital faded again. The endless corridor returned. The figures waited in silence. The boy looked at her. "Where do we go?" Emma turned her gaze forward. At the far end of the corridor, a dim silver light shimmered. It did not burn. It did not blind. It called. She understood now. She was the bridge, the space between heartbeat and silence, between fear and surrender. Another door burst open somewhere behind them. A new voice cried out. An older woman. Panicked, Emma felt the pull again, stronger, demanding. The corridor trembled slightly. The darkness shifted like a living ocean. She guided the boy forward. Each step felt heavier, as if something resisted her, as if something did not want them to leave. The shadows along the walls began to stretch unnaturally. Long fingers reaching outward, whispers changed tone, no longer desperate, hungry. Emma tightened her grip on the boy's hand. "You must keep walking," she said firmly. The silver light flickered ahead. One shadow peeled away from the wall. It rose taller than the others, its shape twisted, featureless, yet aware. It moved toward them slowly. The temperature dropped again. The boy squeezed her hand painfully. "What is that?" he whispered. Emma knew. Not all souls moved on peacefully. Some stayed too long. Some fed on fear. The shadow stopped inches from her. It leaned close. No face. Yet she felt its gaze. "You belong here." A low vibration echoed through her mind. The words were not spoken. They were felt. "You chose to remain." Emma stood her ground. "I chose to help," she answered. The corridor darkened further. The silver light dimmed slightly. The shadow stretched wider. "You cannot guide them forever," it pulsed. "Eventually you will forget again." A sharp memory pierced her mind. The accident, the choice, the years of forgetting, the repetition. Had this happened before? Had she remembered and forgotten many times? The thought shook her. The shadow reacted instantly. It expanded, feeding on doubt. The boy cried out behind her. Emma closed her eyes briefly. She centered herself. Fear strengthened the dark. Compassion weakened it. She stepped forward instead of back. The shadow recoiled slightly. "You do not control this place," she said calmly. Her voice grew steadier. "I walk between worlds by choice." The silver light brightened in response. The corridor vibrated. The shadow hissed in a soundless wave. Then it retreated into the walls. The hungry whispers faded once more into distant murmurs. Emma exhaled slowly. She guided the boy forward again, step by step. The silver glow surrounded them now. Warm, safe. The boy looked lighter, almost transparent. He turned to her one last time. "Will I see you again?" She paused. She did not know the answer, but she smiled gently. "You will not need to." The light embraced him fully. He dissolved into brightness. Gone, peacefully. Emma remained at the edge of the glow. The corridor behind her stretched endlessly once more. Another door creaked open in the distance. Another voice called out in confusion. The hospital heart monitor echoed faintly again. Another life ending. Another soul awakening. Emma felt no fear now, only purpose. Yet somewhere deep within the shadows, something still watched. Something patient. Something ancient. It waited for her to weaken, to forget again. The cycle would continue, unless she found a way to break it. And as she turned toward the next trembling voice calling for help, the corridor shifted subtly, revealing a darker passage she had never seen before. A passage that pulsed with a rhythm far older than any hospital machine. And from that unseen depth came a whisper that was not desperate, not lost, but deliberate and knowing, speaking her name with familiarity, as if it had known her long before the accident. Long before the hospital. Long before she ever believed she was human, and the sound of it sent a tremor through the very foundation of the endless hallway as she slowly stepped toward that new darkness, realizing that guiding souls was only the surface of something far greater and that the truth of what she had become was still waiting to be uncovered just beyond the reach of the fading silver light. As the silver light dimmed behind the last soul she guided, Emma stood alone in the endless corridor and finally understood that there would be no clocking out, no sunrise drive home, no small apartment waiting with cold coffee on the table, because the hospital had never truly been a workplace but a doorway, and she had been standing in that doorway for far longer than memory allowed her to admit. And when the ancient darkness at the far end of the hall spoke her name again, not in hunger but in recognition, she felt the final layer of fear dissolve from her spirit, replaced by something far more powerful than terror. A clarity that burned steady and unshaken, and she realized that she was not trapped between life and death, but entrusted with the fragile crossing that every soul must face, and the shadows that once stretched like claws now recoiled from the quiet strength rising within her, because she remembered everything at last: the accident, the choice, the promise she had made in the silent space between her final heartbeat and the void. A promise to stand as a guide so that no one would face the dark alone. And as another distant heart monitor echoed into silence, and a new trembling presence emerged from a doorway, confused and searching, Emma stepped forward without hesitation, her form glowing faintly against the shifting black, and the corridor responded to her will rather than the other way around. The silver path widening, the oppressive weight lifting, the ancient watcher retreating deeper into whatever abyss had birthed it, waiting perhaps for another chance that would never come, because Emma was no longer uncertain, no longer forgetful. And as she reached out her hand to the frightened soul before her, she felt the entire endless hallway steady itself around her presence, as if the space between worlds had accepted her fully. And in that powerful stillness, she understood that what the patient whispered was not a warning, but an awakening. Not a curse, but a calling. And though her human life had ended long ago, her true existence had only just begun, eternal, unwavering, and brighter than any light that death could ever extinguish.